Radio for people paying mortgages and raising kids. Beth and Chet, the WHAM Morning News.
7:17 on WHAM, a day after the legislature passed one of the state's latest budgets in New York history. Financial and business analysts say the budget overspends and overtaxes. Well, Governor Patterson says he's not done yet. He wants to call lawmakers back in October to have them vote right at the height of the election season on his proposal to limit local property tax growth. And here to talk about that is Brian Sampson. He's executive director of the group called Unshackle Upstate. Brian, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, good morning, Beth and Chet. Glad to be here.
We know that this property tax cap issue is a big issue for the people who follow Unshackle Upstate. How popular is this?
Well, universally, regardless of where I go in upstate New York, even down into Westchester and out on Long Island, it is the number one issue that we hear about time and time again. And when you consider the fact that New York State, on average, is 79% higher than the rest of the nation when it comes to our property taxes, and we in upstate New York have the great distinction of having the 16 highest taxed counties as a percentage of home value in the country, it's a pretty big issue.
So, Brian, what's the holdup? Why isn't this being done? It would seem like a no-brainer since the constituents want it. Why isn't it happening?
A couple reasons, I think. One is that some of the people that are making decisions about a property tax are from New York City, so the elected officials down there. They don't fund their school systems through a property tax mechanism. It's through a personal income tax mechanism, so they don't necessarily see that issue. And the other reality is that it's an issue that does not resonate well with the teachers' unions. They see it as an attempt to put a limit on salaries and benefits for their members, so they fight it tooth and nail.
Brian, one of the things that Unshackle Upstate does, and you do this through Facebook and other social media, is you're trying to educate the voting public about their representatives and how they're voting and the issues, break down the issues for folks. Right. So you really got your finger on the pulse, at least of the people who are checking out your pages and so forth. We hear about this voter unrest, and we've heard this before. It seems like, though, the same leadership always goes back to Albany after Election Day. Do you think there's anything different this year?
I think it's very different this year. We tend to be a fairly apathetic voting base, but as I travel around, everybody is paying attention now. And we went the route of the social media to get more New Yorkers engaged and educated about what's going on, and it's working quite well. People are on Facebook. They can find us there, or they can just go to our website and sign up, and they can get all of our emails. But it's also important that while they're angry, we point them in the right direction. We make sure that they're registered to vote. We make sure that they have the tools that they need. And I think this is the year to do it. There comes a time, maybe once every lifetime, where all of us have to stand up and say, all right, this is it. I've had it. This is that year for the taxpayers in New York State. All 212 seats of the legislature are up for grabs. The governor, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the comptroller, it's all there. If New Yorkers want to start to take back their state government, we need to do it this year, and we need to do it one or two or three representatives at a time, and we do it again in 2012, and we do it again in 2014. It's going to take some time, but if we don't start putting people in there that are fiscally smart and fiscally responsible that want to represent the taxpayers, we're going to continue to get the government we have currently. We're going to get yet another clunker of a budget like they just signed, and nothing's going to change. So I think people are finally realizing that, and they're going to take action on November 2nd. As we said, that's Judgment Day. It's Judgment Day for the elected officials, and it's Judgment Day for us.
Well, some of the people who have talked about the tax cap use these arguments. I guess the head of the Assembly, Silver, says that by doing other things, such as giving more aid to schools, we wouldn't have to resort to a tax cap. And a local assembly person has said, well, if we had a tax cap, that would allow schools and local governments to spend up to the cap limit, and they might actually spend more.
Two things with that. Only in the state of New York could increased education spending be disguised as property tax relief. Right? I mean, come on, that's ridiculous. Secondly, the 4% cap that was passed, we believe it's probably too high. When you look at what Massachusetts did back in the 80s, they capped it at 2.5%. They had underride, override provisions. They had that the state could no longer pass any mandates down to the school districts and the local governments. We adopted that plan. We introduced it early on this year, worked it through both houses, continue to push the property tax. When Massachusetts passed that plan, they went from third highest in the country to 33rd highest in the country as far as property taxes. They now graduate more students with higher test scores than New York. So the argument that you raised rings hollow. If we as voters have a cap in place that we can override for special projects or underride if we get enough signatures on a petition, then that's a good plan for us. But as we saw this past fall, when school districts are called to task to keep their expenses under control, they'll do it. But if they can run roughshod, some of them are going to. We've got to have the cap to start driving down those costs.
Mm-hmm. Well, Governor Patterson seems to be pushing some of these things. I guess he's in a position where politically he has nothing to lose. He's a lame duck governor. And, we say that there's a good chance, obviously, unless the stars realign, that Andrew Cuomo will be our next governor. What sort of opinions does Unshackle Upstate have about what he's proposed so far?
Well, I have a great deal of respect for Governor Patterson. He was put in a tough spot taking over for former Governor Spitzer. If we had had the Dave Patterson that we've seen over the last 4 to 6 months, we might be having different discussions about what's going to happen, this fall and into next year. Attorney General Cuomo, as well as Rick Lazio, have both advanced some property tax plans that they think would be appropriate. Attorney General Cuomo's mirrors what we have introduced. It's 0.5% lower. So from our standpoint, when he came out with that, we went out to our Facebook fans and our database and our Unshackle Upstate followers and said, hey, this is a good plan. You might want to jump on board and tell your elected officials that you support it. So when we see good things, we're going to tell people about it. And when we see bad things, we're really going to tell them about it.
So how do we find you, friend you, tweet you, get your tweets?
You can find us on the web at unshackleupstate.com. You can find us on Facebook. Just do a Facebook search for Unshackle Upstate. We're on Twitter at Unshackle New York. And then I think I just want to put in another shameless plug. We launched our Political Action Committee, our taxpayer PAC, earlier this week. If people want to have a hand in reforming their government, come and sign up, make a contribution. You can find it at unshacklepac.com. But we need everybody to join with us. If our elected officials don't believe that the taxpayers have the backbone to vote them out, then they're never going to change their habits. It's time that we start aligning all of the votes and all the resources. We go after certain individuals. We make sure they're not reelected to office. And we start to take our government back, a couple seats at a time.
Brian Sampson from Unshackle Upstate, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Beth and Chet, always a pleasure.